Hi class, welcome again to another session on biomaterials. So continuing our learning about various biocompatibility tests, let us move on to having an insight about the systemic or acute, subacute, subchronic and chronic cytotoxicity, so chronic toxicity tests, right? So these tests are described in ISO 10993/11, and although the main method described is based on dosing of chemical and leachable substances. These tests provide substantial information about general adverse reactions or adverse effect through the use of medical device for short and long duration. So systemic toxicity, if it is an acute test, then test duration has to be less than 24 hours. So if it is subacute toxicity, 24 hours to 28 days is your duration. If it is a subchronic toxicity, then 90 days in rodent, but not exceeding 10% of the lifespan of other species, right? And subchronic toxicity, you have 14 to 28 days, and this also include intravenous toxicity. And then chronic toxicity, you have to test it for 6 to 12 months. So like I said, these test results do not appear overnight. You have to give sufficient amount of time to make sure that your device is absolutely safe to be used on a human, right? So that's why these tests take really long time, and testing of biomaterials as such takes a really long time. After manufacturing, you have to perform all these tests, and then your device will be safe to market, right? So you have the genotoxicity, cytotoxicity, and reproductive and development toxicity tests. So these tests are performed on devices that are in contact with the body permanently. So reproductive and development toxicity cannot be tested in vitro, right? It has to be done in vivo, but you can do a risk analysis, right? And make sure that if you have sufficient evidence that through the risk analysis that there is the device in contact is not going to affect the reproductive development of the species that the device is being implanted upon, then you can based on the risk assessment, you can mitigate the reproductive and development toxicity criteria of your device, and then you can start selling it. So although you have to have sufficient evidence, you have to have a very strong argument to say why your device shouldn't be undergoing reproductive and development tests. So the next one is implantation tests, which is mainly for implanted device. So these are performed to analyze the effect of medical device at the implantation site, right? So the objective of such test is to investigate the local effects of the medical device at the implantation site. So tissue response to the implant and the effect of any degradation or integration should be characterized based on these tests. So tissue response are determined as a part by analyzing. Excuse my son, he's very excited outside. So tissue response should be determined by extent of fibrosis and inflammation, then tissue degeneration, then immune cell response in terms of numbers and distribution, then you have to have necrosis based data, then tissue alterations such as vascularization, bone formation, fatty infiltration and granular formation as well, and then material parameters such as any fragmentation and degradation, and finally the quality and quantity of the tissue in growth. All this has to be analyzed with the implantation test, and these results needs to be submitted to the notifying body. Finally, you have the mutagenicity test. So mutagenicity is basically to study if there is any genetic mutation occurring because of the chemicals that are leaching out of the medical device, right? So this information on mutagenicity test is often used by the regulatory bodies such as the FDA during the decision making process. So what happens is, if the mutagenicity test is passed, then FDA will say like, okay, such and such device is not going to pose any risk in cancer, and therefore it is okay, right? Okay to be marketed and so on. So various in vitro and in vivo tests are there to evaluate mutagenicity, and the results are approved by FDA after before approving a particular. The results are assessed by FDA before approving the device. Now, mutagenicity tests have different level of sensitivity and specificity, right? Which contribute to false positive as well as false negative results. Again, there's no particular gold standard method that would say that okay, confirm mutagenicity is going to occur, or this product is not going to cause any mutation at all in the human body. So it's very difficult. Like, you know, it's just a learning curve for everyone. So regulatory body of various countries have designed a framework, and that includes various tests. So this framework is to protect the humans and other living beings and the environment at large, right? So there are various tests that need to be performed, and you know, it's not just one test that would determine whether a device causes mutation or not. And still, after so many strict restrictions and after so many guidelines, there's still mutagenicity that is occurring, right? And finally carcinogenesis is also occurring, right? So all these are issues that needs to be, I mean, this is an area under development at the moment. I mean, there are tests that can, I mean, you have to have multiple tests to confirm whether, you know, your device is going to cause mutation or not. And still, even after multiple tests, people are not 100% sure that mutation would not be caused because of the particular implant. So this is a gray area as far as biocompatibility tests are concerned. I hope you had a very fruitful session learning about these types of tests with me. I shall see you again in another video where we shall discuss the in vitro and in vivo tests. I hope you take care till then.